A beautiful morning to you out there. The program is the Dailies, where we keep you up to date with what is happening from the Nigerian newspaper. I am Sarah Elisha Dasho, and remember, you can be part of the show by joining us via Facebook, YouTube. Drop your input, your comment. We're seeing that especially with what happened yesterday, where Labour took to picket most of the offices of the NERC, and we're seeing that we are having cross-section of what happened in the various states across the Federation. So we would love you to actually join us and then let us see how we can, go through the paper, review it, and see some of your solutions. I will be doing the program alongside Rachel Tansey. Good morning.
Good morning, Sally.
All right, let us go straight into the paper, starting with the Leadership newspaper. Fubara to pro-pass administrations in River State, detail found on page 7. UN cries out as 360,000 flee Rafah amid Israeli offensive. You can find detail of that on page 12. And what's trending? Police arrest woman for trafficking in Ogun State. 50 illegal refining site uncovered in Bayelsa State. And on recapitalization, investors set for 3.894 trillion naira stake in banks. Detail of that can be found on the front page and more in the paper. And on the electricity tariff hike, Labour shut down NERC disclosing states, where we can see cross-section of the picture showing what actually happened across the Federation. Also, we're having Tinubu directs all MDAs to buy CNG-powered vehicles. And on 2024 Hajj, 428 pilgrims depart Nigeria tomorrow. Northeast resident lament total blackout that you can find on page 20. Qualifying Nigeria for 2026 World Cup, my goal coming from Finidi. And the big story on the paper on 2027, where we have Atiku, Obi, Saraki, Lamido begins alliance talk. Obi must get approval of party leadership coming from her papa. It's all about state of the nation. Tanko Unisa is saying that, and then it's just a mere meeting. So if you want to know what actually happened during the meeting, do well to get the paper in detail of that on page 4, and that's all on the Leadership newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, no way to resolve our conflict throughout. It's $2 at 1,515 in parallel. Tinubu vehicles details can be found on page 21. I have no regrets donating burial materials to my constituents. This is a statement coming from Senator Hanga. You can find details on page 9. The big story is on inflation. CBN will tackle interest rate to retain foreign investments, and assurance coming from Cardoso. Details can be found on page 7. Labour shut discuss offices nationwide, demand reversal of electricity tariff hike. At chieftaincy installation, Adeleke vows to transform Osun rural areas into cities. You can find details on page 23, and that's all the news on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Guardian newspaper, Mistrust Great Stall take off of new telephony licenses in 31 states, where we're seeing the MVNO licenses, about 46 firms, where we have tier 5, 10 companies, about 500 million naira each, tier 4, 6 companies, 600 million naira each, 15 companies at 130 million each, and then we're having committed about 8.6 billion naira for licenses, talking about MTN, Airtel, Glo, and also 9 Mobile. Now on the surf states is about 31, and then inactive telephone lines are about 98 million telephone lines are not active. So you can read more detail of what this is all about on page 6. 2027 opposition party leaders to meet over mega party. You can find that on page 3. 265 local vessels registered abroad as Nigeria lacks in registrar digitalization. You can find that business in NLC TC picket NERC discourse office nationwide. You can read detail in the paper. Obi meet Atiku Saraki orders over Nigerians rules. Details found on page 3. Concern as U.S. study visa refusal reached record level in 2023. Stock investors lost 3.8 trillion naira in less than 2 months, and Fubara vows to probe Wike orders panel of inquiry. You can find more detail of that in the paper, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Metric newspaper, Rivers crisis, Fubara blows hot, says it's clear that there's no way to settle the crisis amicably. Unveils plan to set up a panel of inquiry to probe Wike's administration. Even if it's by mistake, I am non-governor, he fires back at Wike and others. Details can be found on page 2. IMF reveals federal government may need supplementary budget to pay new minimum wage. Excited sports minister officially unveils Finidi George as Super Eagles head coach. Details of the unveiling can be found on page 16. Obi visits to Atiku Saraki Lamido. Details emerge. State of the nation at center of each discussion, Obi 8 says. You can find details on page 3. Fresh trouble for Sirika, EFCC to arraign ex-minister brother on fresh 8-count charge today. After nationwide picketing exercises, federal government vows to pressure to convene meeting next week on electricity tariff hike. Details can be found on page 3. Tinubu mandates all MDAs to procure CNG-powered vehicles. EFCC to arraign Emefiele on Wednesday over Naira swap case. Tinubu swears in 2 national population commissioners. Details can be found on page 3. And then still on the entertainment and ongoing rivalries, Beef threatens Nigerian Afrobeat as artists deep in rivalry. You can find details on page 14, and also a picture story building shake with ex-Vice President Atiku Abubakar when Obi paid a private. And the newspaper. Obi meets Atiku Saraki Lamido over the hardship faced by Nigerians. And now concerning the fact that the APC wants to take over every state in the nation, and therefore there is a need for a mega party. But I hope that this is just beyond let us come together and form a party. But this should be about the plight of Nigerians. I mean, I'm happy that we'll be meeting them. If really the whole meeting is about the hardship Nigerians are going through, and you are trying to see that individually in your various parties, what can you people do to lessen the hardship on the lives of Nigerians, then I think it's a good one. But if it's just about another political rally again, whereby we're trying to push APC out of power just so that we can be in power, and you do not have any other smart move to make sure that you'll be able to, rescue Nigerians from hardship, then I would say it's a no, whatever the mega party is. Because we've seen where politicians cross carpet from one party to another, depending on where it looks greener from where you are standing. So I'm hoping that this shouldn't be, another party where we are seeing various, there was an attempt like Gather. I know that 2027 is not very far, before realizing presently. What can we do? Already we are seeing Labour has already frustrated or have already stopped activities in the various electrical companies as it is presently. So what can we do to see that we do something? I remember during your manifesto, you all had something you wanted to do concerning power sector. What can you do even before 2027 to see that, let us even give our idea on what can be done to be able to rescue the power sector. So let us keep our fingers crossed. Let us see how this whole meeting will unfold. But I am hoping it should be that, we have the best interest. Emerging parties for strength and all of that. And except if they will look at smaller parties that are willing to give up their rights and then merge with the PDP. But I believe in the last general election, Labour Party became a force on its own, a really big force on its own. And I don't think, looking at what happened at the last general election, there will be any merging whatsoever. There could be maybe some underground strategies and then some talks about ways to thoughts and one for how they see Nigeria should go. So then merging to become a force, I see it as difficult. Looking at how things are, Atiku is not about to give up concerning the presidential race in Nigeria. I don't know when he plans on giving up, but so far so good. He's waxing stronger every general election, regardless of its outcome. And I'm seeing that even if he doesn't make it for 2027, he will be there for 2031 and the years ahead, as long as he's alive. And then the question is, we are now also seeing a younger person who made a mark that he also left PDP to the Labour Party. There was also decamping. I mean, these politicians are guilty of one political habit or the other. You can't really say anyone is innocent in the first place. But we saw how it's for the first time, maybe, I don't know, but perhaps when I started following politics, where someone leaves a party that is quite big, goes to another, and then becomes a competing force in such massive way within a very short period of time. So I believe with that mark, there will be talk, of course, on ways forward, but imagine to fight one party. I don't see APC as a one-party system, because they've been there 8 years now, plus this 4 years for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be 12 years, and they are yet to outgrow or outpass it, any word like that, Sele, the number that the PDP have had in office. We've had PDP having 16 years, and nobody saw it as a one-party system. Obviously, it ended after 16 years. So if we are going through a pattern where it will be 16 years for different parties, we'll just have to wait and see. But I don't think there's any threat concerning a one-party system here. It doesn't matter, Sele, at the end of the day. Even if it is one party, are we growing? I think in the end, that's the question. I think in the end, just as you said, what is their meeting all about? Are you trying to find ways to better Nigeria, or is just to take out a party? Are you coming together for a better Nigeria, or is just to form an alliance against a party? Because in the end, even if we have one party ever since the Fourth Republic, the question is, have we grown? If we are growing, then so be it. Let the one party keep growing Nigeria. In the end, it's all about growth. And after all, we can't have more than one administration for more than 8 years. So it will still be different mindset, different people, different intelligence. There might be continuity, but there will still be something peculiar and different about the turn the new administration will take, even if it is under the same party. We just want growth, regardless of the party. In the end of the day, we just want to see Nigeria that is heading towards somewhere better, new ideologies that will put us on the map, and not just put us where we are right now, that we are literally sinking, but we are being told we are not sinking. But the words coming out from our leader is different from our reality. They are not meeting together at all. So but we just want to see growth, regardless of what party rules this country.
Well, let's just look and see how this whole meeting will turn out to be, and the alliance that can turn out to be. See on Daily Independent, CBN governor says interest rate will stay high until inflation is safe. So look forward to another new interest rate coming from the CBN. And on electricity tariff hike protests, power sector privatization, federal government what policy mistake coming from Labour, with the rider insists on reversal of tariff hike, says increase unacceptable, asks the federal government to reverse the privatization and recover assets from investors. Paralyzes business activities as discos NERC office nationwide. Federal government promises to go back to drawing board, come up with solution. We hope the solution comes up soon. You can find detail of all these talks on page 29. No Nigerian child will be excluded from quality education, coming from Tinubu. And we have CSO asks Nigerians to rise against apathy policies in power sector. Tinubu orders MDAs to produce CNG-powered vehicles. Tinubu swears in 2 MPC commissions. Fubara Val probe Wike's administration. Assembly confirmed that Gogo Aburoma as commissioner. Downside of the paper, tighten grip on nation's enemies, Sanwo-Olu tells armed forces. You can find that in page 6. That's all on Daily Independent newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, the big story, electricity tariff hike. Federal government convenes meeting as Labour threatens indefinite protest. Federal government to address Labour's complaints. Protesters storm NERC block discourse offices in states. Federal government may need supplementary budget to pay minimum wage coming from IMF. CBN may intervene as Naira slides to 1,478 to $1. Atiku Obi initiate alliance talks ahead of 2027 polls. EFCC indicts Sirika brother in new 19 billion naira fraud. Details can be found on page 19. POS operators drag CAC to court. On governorship poll, INEC resumes voter registration in Edo and Ondo State. Federal government plans performance-based salary scheme for workers. Omotekun arrests 45 suspected criminals in Ondo. Delta mother, 16-year-old son found dead, 2 unconscious. You can find details on pages 4 and 5. And we have a picture story at the Africa Magic Viewer Choice Award from left to right, where we can see Best Lead Actor winner, Bread of Life, talking about Wole Ojo, and also the director of the movie and other award winners for the night. This took place on today in Lagos, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Richard, the comment coming from IMF concerning federal government may need supplementary budget to pay minimum wage, I'm actually seeing that. It's definitely because there's no money anywhere that was kept for the new minimum wage. If you take a look at our 2024 budget, you would agree with me that the federal government did not make room for that. So definitely there will be a need for that. But I was listening to the Senate President where he was talking about cutting the cost of governance and the fact that they need to look into other ways that are sinking money where we can actually save. And I remember you and I were asking questions concerning we stop paying fuel subsidy. Where is that money? That's one. Secondly, we're going to stop paying electricity subsidy as well. We are saving another money there. Now the question will be, where is the money? How much have we recovered so far? And here we're seeing that there will be a need. So that is to say, before the second half of the year, we will be seeing a supplementary budget coming, because eventually any suggestion that comes from IMF, definitely the government always, and then we'll see that eventually. So we're seeing that eventually Rachel will still be running on another deficit. So I don't know where we'll be borrowing from. World Bank, China, Japan, Australia. I don't know where the next place. CBN again for ways and means, which we know that we are not supposed to even touch that money whatsoever, except for a very, very critical solution. So let's just see what will happen eventually concerning the budget.
The ways and means have been touched already. We don't even know as it stands now whether we have the ways and means, because over 30 trillion from it has been taken. Nothing to be accounted for. And the last thing we heard from the CBN governor concerning the ways and means is that it has been sorted out. And by sorted out, I believe it has been swept under the carpet. That's what it means. Because we can't not just sweep 30 trillion naira and say it has been sorted out. How? This is a money that is more than our entire year budget. Shouldn't we just have carried it and funded the budget rather than borrowing and looking at the deficits we're in? And all of that, I know the money doesn't work directly like that, but if we can even associate it like that, you can freely say something like that. Because how can this much money be approved and nothing to show for it at the end of the day? And we just have trillions and trillions of naira not being accounted for in our economy. And then now here we are having IMF, as usual. I'm beginning to have issues with IMF. On this one, though, they might be right on another level. But then, rather than supplementary budget, Sele, what about intensive revenue generation? I know certain things is long term, there's short term and all of that, and some things are not just magic. But we have time frame for everything, and minimum wage talk didn't just start in 2024. This is something that has been in play since 2023. And the question is, you presented a budget knowing fully well that you have promised to Nigerians that there will be a new minimum wage. Why wasn't some part of it captured? Because whether we like it or not, a supplementary budget means more deficit. That is what it means. There's no any other. It means a minus. It means a red concerning our deficit. It means more. It means more borrowing. More borrowing. Exactly. It means more borrowing for us in the country. And then the question is, why didn't you capture it into it? Either way, so that it's a process. For example, Sele, before we get to a certain point, certain revenue has been generated, and then we move. Now, when we talk about more, there will be people that will borrow, Sele, because will give us money. Because whether we like it or not, is what we call neocolonialism, is what we call modern day slavery. Because there are countries that we are still owing them the next 20 years. And the more we are taking is 10 more years added to those to that 20 years.
And then before we know Nigeria. It's entitled to pay over
so
30.
There are countries that we're indebted to for years now, counting. And whether we like it or not, we are under this country. And you don't know what economical revolution will happen and what it will imply for the future of certain countries that are in so much debt like us. Nigeria, and we can keep calling ourselves the giant of Africa. Is it giant of big loans or what? And all of that. So yes, there will be need for a supplementary budget, but more than quickly going in for a supplementary budget, how do we go about our revenue is very important, and I don't see much being talked about concerning revenue. I see wooing investors in, but who are the investors coming? We've just heard talks, but rather than seeing them coming, we have more of them folding out and going. And what I don't like about minimum wage, Sele, for years, because of how the Nigerian government have failed in curbing inflation, is you give with one hand and you collect with another. Even if somebody's minimum wage goes up to 100,000, but by the time that person's daily transport fare is 1,000 naira, we have 30,000 out of this person's income, and that person is left with 70,000 naira. By the time the tariff is what it is, electricity, and you find out that for you to properly consume electricity in your house, you will need at least, Sele, I'm talking about at least, and I know for a lot of people it's more than this, 20,000 naira for you to properly consume electricity in your house. At least we're looking at 50,000 naira gone, and we haven't even talked about food. We haven't talked about
rent, and
we haven't talked about rent.
About health,
we haven't talked about health. We haven't talked about education. We haven't talked. So what are we saying? I'm never impressed, because the main thing, Sele, is working on inflation in this country, and the government is not doing anything whatsoever. So even if we have a minimum wage that makes sense, Sele, to some extent, as long as our inflation is increasing, we are still back to where we are yesterday. The number might sound big, but what is the purchasing power of this minimum wage? In the end, is the power it has over the inflation that matters, if this minimum wage is truly a minimum wage or just another wage for people to just keep quiet and just keep living and thriving. I just hope that other than just talking about a supplementary budget, what do we do about curbing inflation and making sure that the minimum wage is efficient, and what do we do about generating revenue rather than thinking of borrowing more money to pay wages in the country?
You know, Richard, there was a time rather than we focus, I see CBN focusing so much on interest rate, and they will keep increasing it until inflation has actually. And I'm not seeing this inflation going down anytime soon because the government is not even doing anything. I remember there was a time I mentioned, I said, why don't we look into what can we do about our exchange rate presently?
Exactly.
What are we doing about right now? We're saying how much the naira is equivalent to the dollar. We're not doing anything about that. We were trying to do abracadabra, and then we say we're back.
We are back. We are back, selling. It didn't.
And then how about talking about our import and export? We've talked about that over and over and over, that we should look inwardly. What can we do? Our cocoa, palm oil, and many other things, rubber, plastic, and all of that. What can we do? We can generate revenue from all of that, but as a country, I don't know if we are ready to do anything. Let's not even talk about our natural resources and all of that we have illegal mining going on presently. So
yes,
we're just losing money in every way, and I'm hoping that the government, just like you said, it's not about another supplementary. Let us curtail what is happening presently rather than focusing on other things. Well, before we continue further with the papers, we would love to take a time so we could actually let you through the stories and then send in your input and your contribution. Please stay tuned with us. Welcome back. It's still the Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories ranging from what IMF said concerning the fact that the government will have to have a supplementary budget for them to be able to take in the issue of paying the minimum wage. And then as well, we are saying that Labour have crippled activities in the various discos and NERC offices concerning the electricity tariff hike. And then we have other stories on the front page of the paper, which we would love to hear from you. So do remember to drop your inputs and also your contribution on Facebook. I still have Rachel Taza with me in the studio. Thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome.
All right, let's take a look at New Telegraph newspaper. Nigeria records $282.6 million total direct remittance in the first quarter of 2024. CBN stops waiver for contraventions of forex regulations. You can find that also on page 25. Obi seek nation space progress visit Atiku, Saraki and Lamido. And on land recovery, Delta demolishes structure on varsity, colleges and others. We have all the stories here. Uni Abuja strike, NAS flays ASU over insensitivity to students' parents' plight. The big story, Fulbara vows to probe Wike's administration, moves to set up panel of inquiry, swears in new Attorney General as pro-governor lawmakers swing into action, confirmed commissioner's nominee. Tinubu mandate MDAs to buy CNG-powered vehicles. You can find that on page 2 and 5. Nigeria-Taiwan recorded $1 billion trade volume in 2021 coming from the ambassador. And on the Guber, INEC to resume voter registration in Edo and Ondo. So for those who are living there, do well to get your voters registration, and then do get your PVC so you'll be able to be qualified to actually exercise your voters' right. This is coming from NLC and TUC as labor hampers activities at the NERC. TCN ACDC headquarters discourse offices says power sector privatization colossal failure. Discourse lament inability to meet up with service level. You can find that on page 3, 8, 26 and 29. And we have a header attack. Food shortage imminent as Benue farmers desert community. And that has been my fear, Richard. If you will recall, I said the farming season is here. But then what is the government of the day doing to make sure that farmers are protected, that they can have access to their farms? And we're seeing here that already Benue, there is known to be the food basket of the nation. I don't know if it is still the food basket of the nation, because we've had number of attacks over and over and over and over. Sometimes you can't help but wonder, do we have a governor in that state? Do we have commissioners in that state? What are they doing? Do we have chairmen in the local government areas? Because sometimes these things happen and then you wonder if the people who are behind this attack have actually been brought to book, or they're getting away with it. So I am hoping that we know this is just Benue, and we're having even in Zamfara, Katsina, Niger, Plateau and many other parts of the country that are presently under siege. So I'm hoping the government of the day will please, whatever they need to do, they should do it, because we cannot afford to go into another food shortage again 2025 as a result of carelessness coming from our leaders.
There is a community in Plateau State that after this series of attacks stood up and protected itself from these headers because the government was not coming to their aid. And the question is, if we run, where are we going to? Because we need life to go on and all of that. And now these days they have been able to bring in some amount of peace to them, to their community, and they're able to live. And it's a no-go area for those herders who thought they had them in their palms. I'm just hoping that the community in Benue does something for themselves. Whatever it takes to take back your place. I'm not talking about violence. I'm not suggesting anything. I don't know what those communities did. All I know is that there was once a time they didn't have any peace. They were constantly under headers' attack. And now they no longer have it. So if you can call on that community and ask them, what did you do? Asked, because in the end, Sele, it's not about living in IDP. It's about, this is your life. This is my life. And if you're in the you're no longer living. You're not living whatsoever, you're surviving. And we keep asking the question, don't they have a governor? We saw the past administration, we saw Autumn struggling with that. And we thought a new administration will come and will change that. And Alia is there. And he's almost not saying anything about it. He's the most silent governor so far in Benue concerning Heather's attack. Autumn was more outspoken. He said a lot of things. He was out there visiting these people. He was very active concerning, but for Governor Aria as it is now, he is very silent and not saying anything about it. You are the first help to your people. Whether you like it or not, you're the first help to your people. And when you keep quiet, and it's not like you're silent and something is happening on the ground. No, you're silent and they're getting killed every single day. So it means nothing. You're not doing anything. You're silent, you're adamant, and you're not getting any work done concerning the safety and securing the life and property of your people in that state. Can the community do something about it? Definitely. But they will need help of other communities also, because you need to take back your life, because we are in a country where the government isn't helping that much. That is the honest truth. Are there the parts where we can feel the impact of the government? Yes. When it comes to security, are we feeling the impact of the Nigerian government? No. In some aspect, yes. But in majority, in the rural areas, and where people are more vulnerable and prone to attacks, they are not. And that is where we are as it is now. So let the community also wake up and think, of how they want to do, because it's just a matter of time. Just as you asked earlier, I don't think they will continue being the food basket of Nigeria if they are not producing the food. It's for a reason. If we begin to have yam shortage, then we know it's because this Benue. When we can't find oranges, when orange becomes so expensive, we will know that is because something is wrong in Benue State and all of that. It's just a matter of time, and this will spread. It will spread. That's one thing about insecurity. It doesn't stay in one place. It spread. It spreads. It's like a wildfire. Before you know it, it's not only few communities in Benue, it's other communities, and before you know it, it's other neighboring states that are close to Benue and all of that. Let the government wake up. So we will not stop asking them to wake up.
Truly.
We see what you are doing, but we demand more from you at the end of the day.
When you do, we ask for more until we get enough and we're so satisfied. Well, we have a study down of the paper New Telegraph that says study discovered THC in breast milk of mothers using cannabis, and this is really dangerous for newborn babies. So I think it's important that you read that on page 26. We have a picture story where we can see the INEC chairman and some of his officials as well, that they will be working concerning resuming the voters registration. So you can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Nation, the big story, FEC abducts CNG-powered vehicles, 4 ministries and agencies. Federal government targets less use of petrol to stem rising cost of living and boost economy. Atiku, Obi, Saraki, Lamido begin 2027 coalition talks. Ex-Labour Party candidates visit opposition chiefs. Details can be found on page 4. Productivity-based wage coming for workers. INEC plans new voter registration in Edo, Ondo. Labour Party's Abure admitted. Restructuring of NYSC for future challenges starts. You can find details on page 3. Finidi Mount Saddle vows rejig of Super Eagles. NFF unveils head coach. Details can be found on page 31. Labour seeks reversal of electricity tariff increase. TUC, NLC, picket NERC and discuss orders. Fubara to raise probe panel on Wike's government. At the downside of the paper, NBA takes annual conference to Kano. Details can be found on page 25. Gender-based violence to end. Details of that can be found on page 3, and that's all news on the Nation newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, Governor Obaseki urges devolution of power, says Nigeria's current design has expired. You can find that on page 6. And on electricity tariff hike, which is a big story on the paper, organized labor ground discos NERC nationwide. Demands complete reversal of power sector privatization, rejects ban classification. Enugu seal 100 billion naira deal to revive palm product firm. And on crude oil theft, NSCDC uncovers 2 illegal pipeline connection points in Rivers. Fubara moves to probe Wike, plans panel of inquiry inaugurates Iboroma as Attorney General. And on food security, federal government targets rice, maize and others for year-round cropping. Tinubu backs gender equality campaign, says he's committed to ensure no child is left out of school. Igbo women beg federal government to halt insecurity killings in the southeast. Seek help from international community. Detail also on page 28. And we have merging speculation rift as Obi meets PDP chief. Visit Atiku, Lamido, Saraki, Bafarawa. You can find that inside the paper. And federal government to introduce wage system for workers, which you can find on page 25. And the picture story here is the Nigerian Labour Congress led by its president, Ajero, protesting power tariff hike in Abuja yesterday. And that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, ahead of 2027 election, Atiku Obi meet over mega party. Why I visited ex-VP Saraki Lamido, coming from Obi. You can find details on page 16. Fubara set to probe Wike's administration, swears in new Attorney General, court strikes out Labour Nigerians to pay for multi-purpose ID card as NIN enrollment hits 107 million. Another stress on Nigerians. I'm waiting for when we will really make life easy for Nigerians in this country. You can find details on page 17. The big story on the paper: Labour picket NERC discuss offices nationwide over electricity tariff hike, demands complete reversal of power sector privatization. One killed as gunmen invade community, burn cars, houses. Invaders making demands from Okomu Oil Palm Management want managerial position, 25% share. You can find details on page 27. Nigeria's current design has expired. We must redesign our system to survive. A statement from Obaseki. Driver killed, 4 sustained gunshot injuries as kidnappers abduct 3 in Oyo. Tinubu ends purchase of petrol-powered vehicles by MDAs. This is concerning the CNG cars and buses. President presides at FEC meeting extends to second day, swears in more NPC commissioners. Federal government plans new wage system based on workers' productivity. Employees on same level may earn different salary. You can find details on page 8. Rather than a productivity-based income, how about an hour-based income? That looks more efficient, that looks more possible, and it makes a lot of sense. You can find details on page 8. And then we have picture story where we can see member of organized labor during a shutdown of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission and distribution companies in central area of Abuja. This happened yesterday, and then behold the Asiwaju of it there. From left, we can see Ogun State Governor Prince Dapo Abiodun, the new Asiwaju of Ideland, Senator Ademola, installation ceremony of the newly installed Asiwaju of Ideland at the Timi of Ideland Palace, Ede, Osun State. This happened yesterday.
On the Vanguard newspaper, banks cut borrowing from CBN by 44% to 12.2 trillion naira, data found on page 19. Fubara to probe governance in the last 8 years. And 10 billion naira airport contract fraud. EFCC arraigned Serika Brother Company today. You can find that on page 8. Tinubu directs mandatory procurement of CNG-powered vehicles by MDAs. And on the tariff hike, which is a big story on most of the papers, Labour protests, disconnect NERC, TCN, discourse officers, says privatization of power sector, colossal failure, demands complete reversal. We have heard your concern, NERC chairman says that. We will go back to drawing board. Federal government tells Labour. We can see Abuja, Kaduna, Yeligua, and Ikeja when Labour went over to the offices. Still on Vanguard newspaper, CBN will retain high interest rates to tame inflation, coming from Cardoso, the CBN governor. Escalating public service wage bills, increasing cost of governance, coming from Apabio, talking about the number of people being employed and all of that. So you can find more detail of what he meant by that on page 15. And on Google polls, INEC resumes voters registration in Edo and Ondo State. And Nigerian Football Federation unveils Finidi as the Super Eagles coach. And then you can find more detail of any other story on the front page of the paper. And that's all on Vanguard newspaper.
On Teen Trust newspaper. All right, on Teen Trust newspaper, the big story, we have St. John Vanney College, Anambra wins National Girls in ICT competition. Group launches campaign on education for Kano rural girls. You can find details on page 4. Student of Sheikh Gumi Academy wins NTA Quranic competition. You can find details inside the paper. And then we have lifestyle on page 7, career on page 5, and well-being on page 14, short stories on page 10, and that's all the news on Teen Trust newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at Business Day newspaper. Cardoso stick to orthodox policy despite Naira pressure. Naira weakens to 1,478 Naira to a dollar on the official market. Kanuri Fulani top list of out-of-school children in Nigeria. This is a report coming from UNICEF. And then we have tier rice store for 10 years heading for Africa's largest market. Retail investors piled into stock market despite weaker purchasing power. NNPC forays for cash as peer pay bumpers dividend. You can find that on page 30, and that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, the big story is a warning. Don't owe him wages. Stakeholders, fans warn NFF after Finidis unveiling as Eagles coach, because over the years it has become a habit and an attitude by the NFF to always, it's just always backlogs of debt. I don't think there's any one coach that have worked with Nigeria that haven't encountered own wages and all of that. So you can find details on page 6. Amusan in confident mood after setting season lead. City Sports to pay £70 million for Eze. Citizens aim to climb over Arsenal. You can find details on page 4 as today they go on with Tottenham. Boniface listed for Rookie Award. You can find details on page 7. Watford won't renew Dennis deal. United make urgent repairs at Old Trafford, as we have viral videos where we can see the stadium flooding. There are so much leakages. You can find details on page 5. PSG to save £200 million from Mbappe's exit. Details can be found on page 3. Chelsea ready to offload Sterling. Details can be found on page 4. Dessers hopeful ahead cup final. Fury's dad injured in brawl with UC pro debut. Details can be found on page 2, and that's all the news on Punch Sport Extra.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this with me. And thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our supporters for keeping a date with us. We look forward again to doing this tomorrow. Do have a great day ahead.